dividing and annexing zeros and the whole process for long division. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that I think are going to be helpful and beneficial while you're working through this, just so that we can kind of maximize our time and really not waste any time on the stuff that we are currently working on. This is going to move fast because we're going to be going through 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 this week, and it's going to cover all of the operations, which is fine because we have, our main skill is to fluently add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So having said that, we're going to jump right in and we're going to start with just some basic division problems and how that's going to look, doing those practice problems and things together, okay? So for starters, part of, or some of the most important things about what we do when we divide is being able to keep your work neat and keep it lined up, and to also be able to set up things in such a way that you can see and have everything that you need where it needs to be. So we're just going to take a basic problem. This is from one of your examples in the books in Module 3. And the problem is 5,272. And the way I'm going to write this is just going to be basically one line per number. I've got my paper turned sideways. What I'm splitting is the 5,272. It's 5,272. 5,272, and it is being divided by 64. The dividend is what I'm splitting. The divisor is how I'm splitting it. Now, when we go through this process, it's going to cover annexing zeros. It's going to cover and address lining everything up. So I just want you to pay close attention and look at what we have here. So if we look at the numbers that we're using in this problem, if I have 5,272, I'm going to start by dividing 64 through the number of place values that it can go through. Now, I know if I estimate and treat that like 6 times 8 is 48. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 will not go into 5. 6 will not go into 52. 64 will not go into 52, but it will go into 527. Because I know that 6 times 8 is 48 and 6 times 9 is 54, I know that cannot be above 8. So I'm going to start with 8, and I think we're going to be good there because that's closer to 60. And the value that I divided through, that's where the first number in the quotient goes. So if I multiply the 8 times the 1's place value. 4 times 8 is 32, so we'll put our 2 down, carry our 3. 8 times 6 is 48, and 48 plus 3, 49, 50, 51 is 51. Now, in looking at that, I divided, I multiplied. My next step is to subtract. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw a little box through where I am in my place values, and I'm going to subtract. 7 minus 2 is 5. 2 minus 1 is 1, and 5 minus 5 is 0. So I have 15. Now I'm going to compare. When I got that difference, 15 is smaller than 64, so that's how I know I divided correctly. After I have subtracted, then I'm going to bring this 2 down to my next place value, and that becomes 152. And I'm going to use estimation and kind of do the same thing. I know that 6 times 2 is 12 and 6 times 3 is 18. So it's only going to go in there 2 times. So my 2 goes above where my 2 is here. And I'm going to multiply times my numbers that are in my divisor. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 6 is 12. So I have 128. I'm going to draw my line down and subtract. And at this point, I'm going to be subtracting with some regrouping. If you look at what we have, make the 5 a 4, then put the 1 that I'm borrowing from that tens place. 12 minus 8 is 4. and 4 minus 2 is 2, and of course that's 0, so I've got 24. Now, 5th grade you did remainders. We're not doing remainders this year. What we're doing, we're annexing zeros, which means I'm going to add a decimal in my quotient and add a decimal down here and start adding zeros and bringing them down. So where my first annexed zero is, I'm going to do 6 into 240. Now I know 6 times 4 is 24, but notice that's 64, so it's going to have to be less. So I'm going to start with 3. Now multiply after I divide. 3 times 4 is 12, carry the 1. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19. So that is going to be 192. Then we subtract. I got to do some regrouping here. 10 minus 2 is 8. 23 minus 19, 20, 21, 22 is 4. So that's 48, and 48 is less than 64, so we're good. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to annex another 0 and bring it down. Okay, looking at this, 64 goes into 480. Well, I know 6 times 8 is 48. It can't be 8 because that's more than 60, so I'm going to use 7. 7 times 4 is 28. Carry the 2. 7 times 6 is 42, plus 2 is 44. Then I'm going to subtract. Instead of doing 80 minus 48, I'm just going to do some regrouping. Make that a 7. 10 minus 8 is 2. 7 minus 4 is 3. And this might be my final 0, it looks like, because I know that 32 is half of 64. So that tells me that 64 will go into that 5 times. So 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 2 is 32, and I'm done. So the quotient is the answer, and if you notice how I lined it up, I've got 82.375 for my answer. And where we annex the zeros, notice we just kept going. You know you're done when either it becomes even and you subtract and get 0, or you have a repeating value. That's what signifies you being finished with your division problem. Now, typically, you will have situations where maybe it seems like the number is going on and on and on, and what you may want to do is have go to the thousandths place value and round it to the nearest hundredths, or they may give you a certain instruction in your pages that you're working on. But when you are looking at and finding the quotients and you're having to annex zeros for your problems, everything that we're doing has to be lined up and set up in a proper way. And I know that looks like it took a lot of room. Of course, if you're writing in your book, you can still line them up and keep them small. We're going to do one more, and I'm going to go through the process one more time. The steps are going to be the same. You divide first, then you multiply, then you subtract, and after you subtract, you compare to make sure that it is smaller than the other value. If it's not smaller, then you divided wrong. And after you subtract, you bring down your next value. And every time you bring down, you have to continue with your process and keep going through all the steps again until you are finished. So let's look at this problem. Let's take, let's see, I've got 52,080. So 5280. I probably wrote that too close to it, but I'll try to make it where it makes sense. 52,080. Let me do, I wrote that wrong. 52080, Jennifer. That is 52,080. Now I'm getting brave, and I'm going to use a flare pen just so it shows up darker and you can see what I'm doing. Looking at this, I do know that I'm not dividing by 52, I'm dividing by 15. I do know that 15 will not go into 5, but 15 will go into 52. And if you think about 15, 15 times 2 is 30, 15 times 3 is 45, and 15 times 4 is 60, so that's going to be 3 times. So 3 times 5 is 15, carry the 1, 3 times 1 is 3, there's my 45. And I'm just going to make my box here. And I'm going to subtract 45 from 52. So I'm going to regroup. 12 minus 5 is 7. And I'm going to bring down a 0. I know that 15 times 4 we said was 60. So 15 times 5 is 75. So that's going to have to go 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 2 is 6. And I subtract. And on this one, I'm going to bring down the 8. And 15 goes into 108. Let's see, 4 is 60, 5 is 75, 90. 15 times 6 is 105. I think it's a 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6. 7, 8, 9. I think that's going to be okay. Or would it be 7 for 105? I think it would be 7 for 105. Let me change that. I shouldn't have wrote that. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. 7 times 1 is 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so 105. Sorry about the mess. Where I brought that 8 down, I'm going to subtract. That's going to be 3. And I'm going to bring down that last 0. And 15 times 2 is 30. So that problem is done. And I did not have to annex any zeros, but the quotient on that one is going to be 3,472. Sorry about my mess. I should have used a pencil with an eraser. But sometimes it's just not as easy. But we'll try one more. I tell you what, I'll write the problem in my pen and then I'll work it out in my pencil, and maybe that'll kind of set it up and show things a little bit easier. So in this problem, this next problem, I'm going to divide 3,409 by the number 14. Now, if you see how spread out and how neat that looks when my numbers are spaced, that's going to help me as I'm dividing, multiplying, subtracting, and bringing down in this process. So looking at what we have here, I know that 14 won't go into 3, but 14 will go into 34. 14 times 2 is 28, so that's going to be close. So 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 1 is 2. If I subtract 28, 29, 30 plus 4, that's going to be 6. 6 plus 8 is 14, or you could regroup. Bring down the 0. We said 15 times 4 is 60. Well, that's close. So I'm going to use 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Carry the 1. Oh, I meant to box that up where I brought that down. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So that's 56. Subtract. And we're going to use regrouping. 10 minus 6 is 4. Then I'm going to bring down the 9. Okay. Oops, I didn't mean to draw that across. I'm trying to do something new with these boxes so that it is more clear for you. Looking at this, I know that 2 times 14 is 28. 3 would be just over 40, so I'm going to say it goes 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 1 is 4. Now when I subtract this, 9 minus 2 is 7. Now I'm going to start annexing zeros. So in my dividend, what I'm splitting, I'm going to add a decimal and a 0, and I'm going to bring it down. And just like we said that 15 was close to 14, if I did 15 times 5 would be 75. So I know that can't be 5 there, but I'm going to keep it 1 less, and I'm going to go with 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. Carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. Let's see how that is. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 6. Oh, that should have been 5. Now, when I just divided that and I got 14, notice I'm dividing by 14. So what that means is where I divided, 4 was too small. So we're going to change that to dividing by 5, or dividing it with 5 as in the quotient. 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7, and then that gives us 0. So it's 243.5 is our final quotient on that. Now, hopefully this helps you see how we're doing the same process every time. Anytime you bring something down, you have to go through the division process again. But as long as you have it lined up, and when you subtract, you compare and you make sure that what you got when you multiplied to get that partial product to subtract is less than what you're dividing by, then that's a good indicator to know how you are correct. Now, any of these problems that you are doing, because multiplication is the inverse operation of division, you can take the quotient that you get and multiply it times your divisor, and then that should give you your dividend, and that's a way to check it, and I'll show you how we do that. So my quotient in here was 243.5, and my divisor was 14. So if I do 4 times 5 is 20, carry the 2. 3 times 4 is 12, 13, 14, carry the 1. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 1 is 17, carry the 1. 8 plus 1, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. I just multiplied that 4, so I'm going to have a placeholder 0 there. And then 1 times 5, 1 times 3, 1 times 4, 1 times 2, and when I add this up, 0, oh wait, you know what I did? Yeah, I've got one decimal that I got to move over at the end, but 0, 4 and 5 is 9, 7 and 3 is 10, carry the 1, 9, 10, 14, carry the 1, 2 plus 1 is 3. So if you look, I've got one number that's behind a decimal, so I'm going to move my decimal over one space, and that gives me the final product of 3409, and look, that's what we were dividing in that. So that question was divided correctly. I hope this helps. I hope everybody gets something from this, and I hope that you're able to use this and apply it. Remember, don't give up. You got to go through the process. You have to write it down. If you're not writing it down, you're not doing it. All right, have a great day.